Our scripture reading comes from 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 1, and then we skip over to verses 17 through 27. After the death of Saul, when David had returned from defeating the Amalekites, David remained 2 days in Ziklag. David intoned this lamentation over Saul and his son Jonathan. He ordered that the song of the bow be taught to the people of Judah. It is written in the book of Jasher. He said, "Your glory, O Israel, lies slain upon the high places. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice. The daughters of the uncircumcised will exult. Your mountains of Gilboa, you mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor bounteous fields. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul, anointed with oil no more. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, nor the sword of Saul return empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely, in life and in death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you with crimson in luxury, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan lies slain upon your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished." May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of the scriptures. Well, shortly before Memorial Day weekend, I was planning my sermons for June, and when I saw this Samuel passage, I was wishing it had been one of the scriptures for in the lectionary for the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. I thought it would be a perfect fit. So you're going to get a Memorial Day sermon a month late instead of a July 4th sermon today. I know Memorial Day weekend is a time to honor and remember soldiers who did not come home from the war, but it is good to remember all of our loved ones who have passed away as well. Joe and I go out and decorate graves of family members with flowers, whether they served in the military or not. It just seemed like a good time to remember all of those loved ones who have passed away. Our scripture subtly tells us that Israel's king Saul had died. Verse 1 starts with, after the death of Saul, almost like it's a afterthought or a pre-thought or something. And then it focuses on David for the rest of that scripture passage, verse. What we miss by skipping from verse 1 to verse 17 is a messenger coming to David and telling him that both Saul and his son Jonathan died in the battle against the Philistines. David had been fighting against the Amalekites. It seems like there was a lot of fighting against various factions, similar to what Israel is going through today with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, and to some extent Iran and the Houthis in Yemen, who fired rockets at Israel when they launched their attack on Gaza. we need to understand a little background here. Saul was king, and he had heard that David had been anointed to be king following Saul. Saul was not happy about that. He wanted his son Jonathan to succeed him as king, but Jonathan wasn't interested in being the king. In fact, Jonathan and David were very good friends, and Jonathan helped make David aware of Saul's plan to kill David. Now here's some more to the story. David married a woman whose name it's spelled Michal. She was Saul's daughter. And I'm going to pronounce her name as Michelle. It looks more like Michael to me, but that sounds like a boy's name, and Michelle sounds a lot better. So David married Michelle. So Saul, in attempting to kill David several times, was attempting to kill his son-in-law. But obviously, David had a high respect for Saul because he was God's first anointed ruler over Israel. And even though Saul chased him around the countryside trying to kill him from time to time, David loved Saul. So the death of Saul and Jonathan grieved David so much that he wrote a lamentation about it, verse 17. And now, here's the curious part. Verse 18 says, in parentheses, David ordered that the song of the bow be taught to the people of Judah. It is written in the book of Jasher. My study Bible says the song of the bow may be an ancient name of David's lament, but it seems unlikely and appears as such in no such ancient manuscripts of the text of Samuel. Now, I'm not as knowledgeable as the experts writing this stuff, but in my mind, it makes sense that what follows in verses 19 through 27 is the Song of the Bow, although it's not written in the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher does have 3 poems in it, but not this one. So we don't really know exactly what they're talking about. The lament starts out, your glory, O Israel, lies slain upon your high places. How the mighty have fallen. A nation's glory is in their strength of their military. Some nations parade their military. And personally, I've seen the Blue Angels perform, and I had a Blue Angel jet coming straight at me, and he pulled up about 50 yards from me, and that was pretty awesome. I was at Clear Lake. They were performing at Clear Lake, over the lake, and they were so low that the water was being sucked up as they flew over. And then they all split on their formation, and one was coming right at me, and I thought, wow, that was pretty awesome. Anyway, David is so devastated that he thinks that the mountains of Gilboa, where Saul and Jonathan died, should be devastated and not bear crops. You mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor bounteous fields. Then verse 23 says, Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely, in life and in death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. David takes some comfort in knowing that they were together all through life and all the way to death. We gain comfort from our understanding of scriptures, which informs us that loved ones who pass away are reunited with other loved ones who have passed on. The other thing I want to point out is David's remembrance of Saul and Jonathan. They are swifter than eagles. They are stronger than lions. He may have been embellishing to show his admiration for them, but sometimes we remember things from the past better than what they really were. The only other thing I want to touch upon from this song is verse 26. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. David said that the love that he and Jonathan shared surpassed the love for women. In today's culture, if a man loves a man more than women, he thinks he's gay. And that's not the case with David and Jonathan. Anyway, David is honoring the memory of soldiers who died upon the battlefield, just like we do on Memorial Day. And David wanted all of Judah to participate in his Memorial Day service. He ordered his lament to be taught to the people of Judah. Did they sing it to mark the anniversary of the day of Saul and Jonathan's death? We don't know. Well, this is a short sermon, so I want to share a story about Memorial Day. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. In a small town nestled in the heartland of America, Memorial Day was more than just a long weekend or an excuse for barbecues. It was a time-honored tradition, a solemn day to remember the heroes who had given their lives for their country. The entire town gathered at the local cemetery to honor the brave souls who had made the ultimate sacrifice. Among the crowd was an elderly man named Mr. Thompson. Every year he came to pay his respects to his best friend, Private James, who had died during World War II. James and Mr. Thompson had grown up together, inseparable since childhood. In the summer of 1942, the two enlisted together, driven by the sense of duty and a desire to protect their country. They went through boot camp together. They were deployed to the European front. One fateful night, their unit was ambushed. Amidst the chaos, Private James was critically injured. Mr. Thompson, disregarding his own safety, rushed to his friend's side. He held James in his arms, whispering words of comfort and promising to get him home. But as dawn broke, James succumbed to his injuries. His last breath was a quiet whisper of gratitude. Mr. Thompson survived the war and returned home, but a part of him stayed on that battlefield with James. Every year on Memorial Day, he visited his friend's grave, carrying with him a bouquet of fresh flowers and a heart full of memories. He would sit by the grave, sharing stories and updating James on the lives of their loved ones, as if his friend could still hear him. As years passed, the town's Memorial Day ceremony grew, with more and more people joining to honor the fallen. Mr. Thompson became a symbol of the town's collective memory, his unwavering dedication to his friend, inspiring others to remember the sacrifices of those who had served. One year, a young boy named Tommy approached Mr. Thompson during the ceremony. Tommy was curious about the war and wanted to know about the man who had been so important to Mr. Thompson. With a kind smile, Mr. Thompson shared the story of Private James, emphasizing the bravery, camaraderie, and love that defined their friendship. Tommy listened intently, his eyes wide open with admiration. When Mr. Thompson finished, Tommy made a promise to him to always remember the story of Private James and to honor the memory of all soldiers who had given their lives for freedom. Decades later, Tommy, now a grown man, stood at the same cemetery with his own children. He told them the story of Private James and Mr. Thompson, passing on the legacy of remembrance. The tradition continued, ensuring that the sacrifices of heroes like Private James would never be forgotten. We need to honor the lives of our fallen heroes. We need to tell the stories. On our youth group mission trip, we visited the World War I Museum in Kansas City. It told bits and pieces of stories. It was fascinating, but we didn't have time to explore it to the extent that we would have liked. But going there was a way of honoring and remembering, just as Memorial Day is. I mentioned early in the sermon how David loved and respected Saul, even though Saul was his enemy at times, trying to kill him at times. Jesus spoke to us about such love as that. He told us to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven and celebrate the lives of those who have passed.